As I mentioned in the previous episodes, in Korean culture, family ties and responsibility do not end with death, for both the living and the dead. In the previous episode, we read stories about dead family member playing a sort of a guardian angel for their descendants. If you missed it, do check it out. Links in the description and at the corner. But if it be true that the dead one could have an influence over the living, it couldn't always be a positive one. After all, it is a sad fact even in real life, some family relationships could be more destructive. In some cases, the resentful past and tangled karma is clear to see. In other cases, the dad is just not happy about how their descendants are carrying on the memorial rituals. And yet, in some cases, it is not at all clear why the loving grandma in life should turn out to be the angel of death in death. Today, we are taking a look at 4 allegedly true stories from Korea about a dead family member playing the angel of death for the surviving ones. As always, handpicked, translated, and narrated by your host, Anthony. Back in high school, a friend of mine skipped school for a few days because of a family issue. When he came back to school, he had a bizarre story to tell. His dad is the firstborn son of the family and took care of his aging mother. The grandmother suffered complications from her long-term diabetics, and one evening she suddenly lost her consciousness and fainted. She was hospitalized, and doctors declared her condition required an immediate operation. But after a few-hour-long operation, the doctor said, despite his best effort, grandmother was still in a critical condition, and the family should better prepare for her eventual passing. Father, being the leader of the family, called in other family members to discuss about funeral. But grandmother was still hanging on, hooked up on life support, and father decided to wait and see at least a few more days. A couple of days passed, and the family members kept the side of grandmother in turn. It was my friend's aunt's turn, and she had a dream while dozing off next to grandmother's bed. A young woman in a rainbow-sleeved traditional dress barged into the ward. She had distinctive slitty eyes and an updo hair, and declared, "This granny isn't dead yet. Go and fetch some sea salt and azuki beans and sprinkle them on her face. Hurry!" The dream was so vivid, Aunt could not just ignore it, and imparted the strange dream to other family members. It caused a bit of a stir. Christian members of the family insisted it was all but a superstition, while some were wary of doing such rude act on grandmother in a deathbed. But father insisted there was nothing to lose trying it. Following night, father, the aunt who had the dream, and the oldest member of the family performed the ritual as the woman in the dream instructed. Grandmother kept stable for the following 2 days, but without any dramatic improvement, and some family members complained that they committed disrespect to her for nothing. But into the 3rd day, her vital signs started finding normal rhythm, and soon after miraculously gained her consciousness. Strange thing was that the first thing she said when she came around was, "Where's that bitch? I'll kill her. Where's she?" The story she told when she further recovered was literally bizarre. Her late husband, my friend's grandfather, was a womanizer, and even dared to bring his lover home to live with the family. On top of obvious reason, his lover was rather slow and rude, that grandmother positively disliked her. When grandfather passed at relatively young age, his lover was kicked out, and for the stigma as a concubine, she was more or less forced to leave the town too, and disappeared from the family's life for decades. Until one day she appeared in grandmother's dream. She looked exactly as when she was young, but pale and disarranged. "It's all because of you. I can't bear going by myself. I shall take you with me," she said, and then sat on grandmother's chest and started strangling her. Grandmother tried to get herself free, but it was impossible all the while she was unconscious. The grandmother lived another 4 years. For my friend's family, it still remains a mystery the whereabouts of the lover of his late grandfather, and who the woman who gave the advice in the dream was. My grandma, on my mother's side, passed away back in 2001. She was healthy despite her age, but something went wrong with the kimbap she ate at the town's senior center, and passed suddenly to everybody's shock and grief. Shortly after, my third aunt had a dream. Grandpa and Grandma appeared, called all the children, and offered 4 lines of kimbap. Oldest uncle, second aunt, youngest uncle, and my mother were the 4 who ate kimbap among the siblings. Somewhat troubling, but it wasn't that Grandma had anyway resentful relationship with her children, and everybody didn't think too serious of it. But then, the second aunt died for no apparent reason. In the following winter, followed the youngest uncle of lung cancer. By then the whole family was at dismay. The uncle and my mother was advised to take care at every step they took. The family even called in a shaman and performed a preventative ritual. Nevertheless, the oldest uncle was the next, apparently of a natural cause. And then my mother. She fell gravely ill and had to get an operation. By then I was furious with Grandma, whom I used to love when she was alive. I prayed and pleaded every day to her that she should spare my mom. And Mom survived. She recovered and still alive and well today. I want to believe that my prayer worked, as Grandma used to adore me. But who knows? Little epilogue to this terrible saga. Years later, a family member inquired a shaman, and she explained that 4 who ate kimbap had been destined to die painful deaths. But 3 who died did so in relatively peaceful manner. Grandma offering kimbap of death to her own children might actually have been an act of mercy to save them from the eventual painful demise. I don't particularly believe in fortune-telling, shamanism, tarot cards, etc. But after the inexplicable experiences about dreams, I cannot but wonder if there isn't really something beyond our common sense. All these dreams involves around my late grandmother. First time, Grandma appeared in my aunt's dream. She looked exactly as she was when she was alive, but kept shivering, saying, "It's so cold, so cold." She didn't say anything else than that, and her face looked almost blue too. It wasn't an everyday event that Aunt get to see Grandma in the dream, and that she should appear in such a condition when she did. My aunt was somewhat alarmed. so much so she and uncles paid a visit to Grandma's grave. The grave was at a private cemetery, and they found that the Grandma's grave was flooded with water due to poor facility management. It ended up with exhuming Grandma and move her into Grandpa's grave together. Second time Grandma appeared, it was in my uncle's dream. Apparently Grandma was so upset in the dream. She didn't say anything in details, but threw away the meal set out for her and then loudly huffed away. Having already experienced the first case, Uncle knew there should be something wrong again. It didn't take long before he realized that he had missed the date of Tessa, the memorial ritual for her. Tessa dates are usually calculated in the lunar months, and one can easily mix it up occasionally. The date Grandma appeared in the dream was apparently the right day to have the ceremony. Uncle hurriedly summoned all the family members for Tessa on the very day. I remember I also had to attend it in a few hours' notice. I find all these cases so fascinating. It is not that any of my family members have any particular spiritual sensitivity either. And yet, Grandma manages to communicate all these things through dream. How curious. My family was pretty rich up until the 1940s. With such a background, my great-grandfather was famous for being virile, hot-blooded patriot. He supported the resistance movement against Imperial Japan, and a womanizer. His wife didn't produce a child for 9 years, and that probably was a good enough reason for him to bring in his lovers and live with his wife and family. His first lover died young, but his second lover eventually gave birth to a son. Now the wife was pushed to the sideline. Everybody knew who held all the power, and not just other family members, but even servants gave her a cold shoulder. She nevertheless adored the newborn baby. She would sneak into the room late at night to give him a cuddle and whisper, "How I wish you were my own." But the mother of the boy hated it and beat her harshly. The poor wife continued a miserable existence in the house for 5 more years and hung herself in the end. Other family members almost welcomed it, now that the lover could become the real wife and her son the legitimate heir. But the family started its slow decline. Great-grandfather died during the independence movement. My grandfather was deemed a genius and was expected to bring back the glory to the family, but for some reason he quitted the university in the middle and got a mediocre job. Family forced him to marry a girl from a rich family and resume his study, but even before he could graduate, Grandma's family went bankrupt. Grandpa once again quitted his study and found himself an ex-marital lover, just like his father did. He unexpectedly died before 40, and Grandma followed not long after, leaving my father, then 15, my uncle, 13, and my aunt, 12. Grandpa also had 5 other children from his lover. Misfortune seemed to carry into the next generation. Grandpa's lover passed in a car accident. Her 2 sons died young from cancer. My dad too got stomach cancer in his 40s, and my uncle, liver cancer. With everything going around, my aunt visited a famous shaman to figure out what was going on. A woman in the family died with enormous resentment. Skinny, double-eyelided. She was so mistreated just because she didn't produce a son. The family is cursed by this ghost who hung herself, Shaman said. But I don't know any of such persons in the family, my aunt said. Ha! Ask around. She's still crying. Wah, wah. Could it be Grandma Kim? That is her. She's so resentful about a son she never had, and against her husband's lover. She wanted a son for herself so much that she took her stepson away, and didn't forget to take his wife so that he wouldn't be lonely. She's now even trying to take the grandsons, your brothers. How come then nothing's happening to me? Aunt asked. You're a girl. That doesn't count, was the shaman's answer, and continued. For the hate of ex-marital lover, she also killed your father's lover and her sons. If you don't offer a big ritual to console her resentful soul, your brothers will soon follow. In the end, my family offered rituals 5 times to her. And probably for that reason, both my dad and uncle recovered fully. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for your listening. It might be a bit unsettling to think a dead family member could still have an influence on you, as demonstrated in the last and this episodes. Some of you might have also noticed the traces of strong patriarchal rules in the families. After all, the world of paranormal is closely related to that of the real life, and cultural differences are unmistakably reflected there. Strong sense of family obligation, and that nothing is purely accidental in the context of karma, as well as the patriarchal prejudice from the past generations, are some of the bases of the Korean psyche, and they are exactly mirrored in these stories, and will repeat in many stories I'm going to read in the future. I find it personally fascinating that paranormal stories can sometimes reflect the collective psychology and cultural values more clearly than other more realistic stories. It is definitely one of my main motivations of running this channel. I hope you keep joining me in this journey. If you haven't yet, please do consider giving me a thumbs up, subscribing to my channel, and sharing my videos with others. Then, until the next, stay safe and take care.